Today in Unit 8, we are moving on to 8.2, talking about using proportions to solve rate problems. So our goal today is to use proportions to not only model the problems, but to solve the rate problems. So similar to 8.1, but moving more towards the proportions. So first of all, we need to make sure we know what a proportion really is. Well, a proportion is an equation where two ratios are equal to each other. So looking at an example, that could be written out like two fractions, which is what we've been doing. So as an example, if let's say I said that I was going 3 miles in 5 hours. We'll just put a little label here to help us. A proportion could be 9 miles in 15 hours. And the reason that works is because really this 9/15 is the same as 3/5 if we would simplify it. So all that we had to do to get there was say times 3 times 3. So that is an example of a proportion. Now if we look and move our proportion out of the way, a non-proportion, you're going to be doing this on IXL today, would be something like this. If I said half is equal to 3/4. No, that's not true. That's not a proportion because I can't simplify 3/4 and have it equal 1/2. So keep in mind today that just because they're written as a fraction does not always mean that they are proportions. They have to be equal, not a proportion. We are going to look at page 282 out of your math journal together, starting with the math message. Solve the problems below, then write a proportion for each problem. So you can see they already set up the proportions for us and have it organized. We just need to put in our numbers. Number 1, Robin rode her bike at an average speed of 8 miles per hour. I'm going to stop right there because I found some information that I can use. She rode at an average speed of 8 miles, 8 miles per hour, which means 1 hour. So just to make sure you see where I'm getting that from, I'm going to highlight that part right there in blue to match that color. All right. At this rate, how far would she travel in 3 hours? So now highlighting this, we don't know how far, but we do know that it's taking her 3 hours. So we're going to put 3 for hours. And then right now, our missing is miles. So we need to figure out how we could make these equal. So there are a few ways to do this, but probably the simplest way for this one is just to look and see, well, from 1 to 3, that's simply times 3. So up here, if we go 8 times 3, just like we did in our denominator, we will get 24 miles. And then all you need to do is go over here, write your answer, making sure that you label 24 miles. Now they started us out with a fairly simple one. That was easy to see the relationship between those numbers. Some of them are a little more difficult. A high-speed copier makes 90 copies per minute. Now notice it doesn't say 1 minute, it just says per minute. So we need to say, okay, 90 copies per minute means just 1 minute. And we have the first part of our proportion. How long will it take to make 270 copies? So now we know the number of copies, 270, and we don't know the number of minutes yet. It's asking us how long will it take. So again, we need to look at the relationship here. And we can see pretty easily, again, it's actually the same rate, that 90 times 3 would get us to 270. So we just need to do 1 times 3 to get us to our number of minutes, which would be 3 minutes. And again, making sure that when you write your answer, that you are labeling 3 minutes. All right, our final problem here that we're going to look at together. Talia rode her bike at an average speed of 10 miles per hour. 10 miles per hour. So what do you think we're going to write in the proportion? All right, hopefully you answered with 10 miles per 1 hour. Now it's asking at this rate how long, so we don't know how long, would it take Talia to ride 15 miles. So we need to go ahead and fill in our number of miles that we know, and then figure out what our equivalent ratio would be, our equivalent fraction. So this one's a little bit trickier. We have to think, okay, 15 to 10, how did that work? You can use your calculator for this, and you would figure out that 10 times 1.5 gets us up to 15. Then 1 times 1.5, hopefully you know that one, is simply 1.5. Notice I wrote as a fraction or a decimal. Doesn't really matter what you do. And then your answer, again, labeling 1.5 with your unit of measure, which in this case was hours. And that is how you use a proportion to solve a rate problem. Your assignment today is to complete page 282, which we did most of together. You just have a couple problems at the bottom. Also work on page 283 with some more proportion and rate problems, and then page 285, which is your math box. On IXL today, you have some review skills from the previous lesson, R7 covering rates, R9 covering rates, and then a new one more about seeing if it is a proportion, like we talked about at the very beginning of a lesson, would be R10. Make sure you're trying out all three of those at some point this week.